Are we online? Yes, okay. Good morning, everybody. I have a cold, so my voice is a bit strange, but I would like to welcome you all online also. We have a problem here in Milano with the traffic, and so there are three of the speakers that called us that they are in the traffic somewhere. So we're going to start very soon. We're not going to necessarily wait with them. We changed the order of the speakers, if necessary, but probably they will come in the meantime. But I just wanted to say, also for the people online, because they don't have the traffic problem, of course. But welcome to everybody. In a few minutes, we will start. Yes, yes. Filippo, you can join us on the stage, and there's Andreas also. Where? Good morning again. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to see that 3 people managed to be here in time, and that we will have 3 other people joining us soon. I'm not sure there's enough chairs, actually.
1, 2.
Good. Good, okay. First of all, I would like to thank the Asian Development Bank, sorry. The Asian Development Bank for hosting us here. I would like to thank Lend-Lease for supporting this event. And I would like also to say a big thank you for the whole team in PlusValue for organizing this event, and a very impressive panel, I think. First of all, I would like to give you a short introduction with a few slides, and in the meantime, we will have more people probably joining us. But we are on a tight timeline, so we will mainly, the title is quite extensive, driving a just transition to urban, I am going to look there, to urban development, investments, innovation, and case studies in social infrastructures in Italy, Europe, and Asian countries. But we will mainly focus on social impact investment in a way. That's what our focus will be today. And I want to present, my slides. Let me see. Yes. Just a brief introduction here. The objective of the session will mainly be to discuss innovative social impact solutions in the field of social infrastructure and their potential to drive a fair transition in the age of climate transition. We will have a roundtable discussion, which I'm a moderator for, with impressive panelists and a very short time. And I would like also to have discussions with the audience. So I will be quite strict with the speakers. And I try myself also to be short so that we have the introduction. Welcome, welcome, Mario. So we have some of the speakers joining us.
The governor is arriving.
Huh?
The governor is arriving.
Okay. Just a brief introduction about myself. I'm a senior policy advisor for the moment for SAI4, and you will have more explanation of SI4 later on, at PlusValue. I've also been a former social policy director at the European Commission. And I'm, in this context here, it might be important, I'm the co-author of Social Infrastructure Investment Report shared by Professor, I call him Professor Prodi, but he was President of the European Commission. Huh? Governor, yeah, please join us. Yeah, I know. I already said the traffic in Milano is a challenge, but we also have.
I would say fashionably late.
Why we started also is that we have people online also, and I think they don't have the traffic problem normally. So the report that I'm referring to, the Social Infrastructure Investment Report, is a base for a lot of the discussions we will have. And that was chaired by the President of the European Commission, President Prodi, and he was also Prime Minister of Italy. The report was made with, together with the European Investment Bank, together with a lot of the public banks in Europe, including the German, the Italian, and the French. They played the most important role. Maybe a few definitions. The social infrastructure definition is a long-term real asset with intrinsic social value. And we focused on housing, affordable, accessible, and energy efficient, health, including long-term care, assisted living, education, schools, universities, long life learning. The current investment, it was very difficult to find data, actually. This is in 2017. And the current data you see there, in total we found that there's 200 billion annually invested in these three areas. Quite significant part of GDP. What is even more important and was even more difficult to calculate in a way is the investment gap. The investment gap came to 150 billion per year, and we calculated to 2030 to come to approximately 1.5 trillion a year for Europe. Europe, the 27 countries in Europe actually, so without the UK at that stage already. What was also quite relevant is that this investment was 20% below the level of 2007, so before the financial crisis. And we don't really have new calculations after the COVID crisis and so on. What is also striking is that most of the investment is the responsibility of local authorities, and we found that local authorities very often are even more squeezed than the national authorities and budgets. So, but of course, there's quite a wide variety across regions and sectors. One of the areas that is most important, I think all of the areas of social infrastructure are important, but a social and affordable housing became very important also politically recently, also in Europe. But globally, I mean, I find these data staggering in a way. 1.6 billion people worldwide lack access to affordable, accessible and energy efficient housing. 60% of these are in Asia. And the world needs to build 96,000 new affordable homes every day. So that means we need scale and we need speed to tackle the issue. And I hope that we find some solutions in the panel here to move this forward. In Europe even, one of the richest areas in the world, housing, access to social and affordable housing decreased, and 9% or 40 million people do not have access to affordable housing. And near 850,000 people are homeless, which is striking for a rich area like we live in. We will hear more from our Director General here really later on, but the Commission has recognized this, the new Commission recognized this urgency and importance of the issue and appointed for the first time a commissioner in charge of energy and housing and a lot of other things that you will talk about us too later on. Something about affordability housing. What is affordability actually? Eurostat in 2021 came with a definition. If a household spends more than 40% of their income to housing, it is called not affordable. So in that situation, 10%, approximately 10% of people in European cities lived in these households that spend more than 40%. And strikingly, some of the countries that we would not expect, Greece, Denmark and Netherlands, are some of the countries that have the highest rate of unaffordable housing. Just a word about the financing. For the moment, around 90%, 94% is financed by the public finances. But of course, when you look at the scale of the gap and the need, we really need to crowd in private sector investments. And in principle, we can have public and private, we can have partnership, we can have a mix. We can have traditional procurement, but we can also have PPP projects or non-PPP projects or corporate projects. So all of this is possible and should be considered in the discussions we have later on. In fact, the investor attractiveness and challenges to overcome are important. The opportunities are really important. I mean, you will hear during the session, I think, that it is attractive for private sector to invest under certain conditions because of the low volatility of predictable long-term returns. We also, maybe I didn't say that enough, investment in social infrastructure is a long-term investment, very often going way beyond the political remits of people in charge. The opportunity is also that it's less exposed to market risk and to systemic risk with the capital market, within capital markets. The challenge, one of the challenges, is the small average capital investment size. And so there are some opportunities maybe to use intermediaries, but also to blend bundling projects and blending instruments. I think we will hear some of these examples too. So we need new solutions and more scale and speed for social housing. We will have, we will also have a presentation of a new tool that is being developed by PlusValue at the last intervention. What is important here is that we need to continue, even if there's a partnership with public-private, we need to continue having and develop instruments to make sure that the social values of the investment remain important, visible, and guaranteed. Here we have the impressive panel of today, and I'm very happy to welcome you all and thank you for running through the city to make it in time. So we have Mario Nava, the first speaker. I will ask a few questions to each of you and hope we can keep time. We have Mario Nava, we have Carlo Monticelli, who is the governor of the Council of Europe Development Bank. We have Shanti Jagannathan, who is the Director General of the Pacific Department. You correct it when you start, okay? I'm sorry for the mistake, okay? Then we have Andrea Rukstuhl from Lend-Lease, the group executive for Lend-Lease. And we have Roxana. Roxana is not there yet? Okay, she is also in traffic, okay? She's also on our way, okay. And then we have Filippo, who is the co-founder and the managing partner of PlusValue. So first of all, Mario Nava, Director General of DG Employment. Maybe we can stop this slide and just put the general slide of the. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Traditionally, Mario. Traditionally, social policies have most often been financed by public funds in the EU. In recent years, however, the Commission became interested in also crowding in private investment, private capital. I mean, that started with InvestEU and other instruments, but please elaborate about the business case to do so.
Thank you very much and good morning. Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Filippo, for the very kind invitation, and Lieve for the presentation. I mean, I think there are two issues here. Issue number one is that well before COVID, probably since we started to measure the investment gap that Lieve presented, by the way, the numbers, the 1.5 trillion, the 170 billion per year, they are all numbers that come from the Juncker plan. There has been a very clear sign around, let's say, 2014, 15, 16, that one of the issues of Europe was a demand gap on the investment side. A demand gap on the investment side, it's relatively natural to say, okay, it's something we have faced, demand gaps. Europe has been pretty good in coping with demand gap in the last 60 years. Say, okay, let's see what to do. The biggest problem in 2015-16 was that in the moment we had to cope with a demand gap, we didn't have the money. So no Keynesian solution was available whatsoever, okay? That was very clear. We had just solved the financial crisis. The financial crisis costed a third of the GDP of Europe, take it or leave it, and therefore there was no other possibility than inventing something. What we did invent, and here comes your question, what we did invent, and at the very beginning it was called the Juncker plan, and then Jean-Claude himself wanted a less personal name, but it was called the Juncker plan, and the idea was what you could describe as a sort of decentralized demand policy. What does it mean? It means that what we had, as I said, there was a demand gap, so if there was a demand gap, it means there was some supply, there were some projects, there were some things that were worthy, simply there was not enough money coming to those things. And what we did with the guarantee mechanism was essentially to slightly tilt for every type of investment the risk-return equation. Because in the moment we were able to give a public guarantee of about on the first loss piece, of course, of about 1/15 of the total. That simply means a little tilting in the risk-return equation of each investment, and therefore it means attracting demand on the investment. That's why I call it, and we called it I even dare to say in literature talk or when you speak at university, decentralized demand policy, because it was demand policy, but obviously was decentralized because we were only putting the guarantee, and the rest of the money was coming from private operator. In a way, it was a response to the size of the problem, the so-called investment gap. In a slide of Lieve, there was the very last sentence, which you didn't read out, but was probably the most important one, was the one to say that the investment gap was very different across regions, which was absolutely the case. And there were 3 countries who collected more than 50% of the investment gap. So what we really needed was truly let me say, a granular demand policy which was able to go in the different part. So there comes the idea of the InvestEU. Of course, as the name, so Juncker Plan then rebaptized InvestEU. And of course, within the InvestEU, the issue is to get to the areas where it's difficult to get. Because if you want to build a bridge, it's easier, trust me, apart from some bridges which are relatively famous, but most of other bridges are easy to build. The difficult thing is to build the social infrastructure. And there it comes I need to be a little bit boring here, but there comes the governance of the InvestEU, which is divided in different windows. And we open up one so-called social window. Now, the social window, you do need social actors. So you do need the people who go and take the pain to go in those areas where none else goes. That's basically, if you try to explain what is a social window to, let's say, a 17, 18 years old person, I think that's the best way to say. Try to go where no one else would go. And that's what we did. And in doing so, we found partner. Actually, one of the partners is sitting here, so thank you very much, Filippo and Lieve. And in finding partner, we discovered one thing, and this is probably the most important thing that I would like you to take home, is that the social investment is as bankable, as investable as any other type of investment. We had a leverage of 1:15. We had one guarantee, and one part of guarantee and 15 part of private investment. So that, I think, is the biggest lesson, and that is what I would like to leave with you and what I hope will be taken into account for the future.
Thank you very much, Mario. Briefly, could you explain a little bit? I mean, the Commission has been supporting social housing in member states since a long time, actually. Obviously not enough, because we still have a problem. But, okay, the Commission recently, as I said in my introduction, created kind of a housing agenda with a new commissioner. Could you explain a little bit shortly, because it's quite advanced already, but...
Yeah, no, it's a different thing. The Commission has been supporting social housing for many, many years, since you were director, Lieve, actually, which is not many years ago, that's not what I'm saying, but I mean, so we have been supporting social housing for a long time through the European Social Fund and so on and on. But here, what the Commission is trying to do is beyond the social housing, is going towards affordable housing. Now, of course, the border between social and affordable is somewhat fuzzy. You have indicated 40%, which is an indicator which is, let's say, recognized as part of our social convergence framework. So if the income of a person is encumbered by housing cost more than 40%, that is considered not affordable. In doing that, the Commission basically took on itself some of the difficulties or responsibilities that before lied with local authorities or central authorities. So the Commission, I think, in a quite courageous way, in the declaration, the political declaration of the President in July, decided to have a Commissioner for Housing and Energy. And the mandate of this Commissioner for Housing and Energy is to solve not so much the demand issue, because the demand issue, I think somehow it continues with InvestEU, but rather the supply side. So it's the supply side where we are looking at, and the supply side is, as you know, normally made difficult by either laws or regulation or non-availability of different areas and so on. So this is the work we are doing. There is a very strict link to energy, obviously. There is a very strict link to income, so to our areas. But that's where the work sits. Will we succeed? My take, and what I always say in this kind of occasion, is that I think it has been very, very good that we started. The attention on it is growing. In some countries, it's traditionally been high, Ireland, let's say. In other countries, the attention tends to be more local. I mean, the town of Milan, for example, is putting a lot of attention on affordable housing. But all that we are doing is also spreading. For those of you who heard Prime Minister Carney, in his first speech, Prime Minister Carney said one of the very first 3 priorities is exactly affordable housing, and he basically read out, quote unquote, with due respect to Mark Carney, read out what we said about affordable housing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I would like to ask, I would like first of all to thank you, Governor, for being here and to joining us. Carlo Monticelli is the Governor of the Council of Europe Development Bank. Could you tell us a little bit? You are traditionally a social development bank, actually, with a lot of experience in inclusive social investment and urban development. Could you tell the audience and us a little bit more about the role of the Council of Europe Bank, and maybe give an example?
Well,
yes.
Thank you, Filippo, for organizing this exciting session. Thank you for having me. Now, the Council of Europe Development Bank is less known than it deserves. But it is the oldest multilateral development bank in the world after the World Bank. We were established in 1956, and it has another very interesting mark of distinction because it is the only multilateral development bank which has social investment as the only focus. And this has been our raison d'être, the reason why we were established. At the time, there was a huge housing issue still coming from the aftermath of the Second World War. And we have, throughout our history, stuck to our guns, continuing to invest in social sector only, meaning just housing, education, and health sectors. Now, of course, throughout the years, we have honed our skills in providing support to this vital area for social cohesion, human development, and productivity. And by the way, let me just stress one point that I believe is particularly relevant as of now, that whenever there is fragmentation, turbulence, tensions, fiscal reduction in fiscal space, typically social investment is the first to be cut. Why? Because social spending is much more difficult politically to cut, and hence this is where the social investment suffers most, and this is where the Council of Europe Development Bank, the multilateral development banks, really can provide continuity. But going back to what we do, over the years we have honed our skills in supporting this sector. I would say in three major ways. The first one is in terms of financial innovation. at the end of the day, financial innovation is not so much that is relevant for the social sector and social housing. It is not so much, in the financial sophistication per se, but in the capability of blending just plain vanilla loans and plain vanilla guarantees with various sources of financing, and doing it in a way where the risk-return balance is done in a way that is most conducive to have investment. The second important aspect is to create synergies between social investment types and between partners. And indeed, this is where there has been a marked acceleration and intensification of relationship, and of course, having Mario close to me, the great relation that the bank has with the Commission as to be quoted. And the third area where really the instruments have become more and more effective is in having resilience at the core of the social investment with knowledge and technical assistance being provided together with the financing. So this support has allowed us to do and operate in plenty of different contexts. And I would like to quote, if you will, two examples at the extremes. One is the regional housing program, which was a program that lasted some 10 years in the post-war former Yugoslavia, spanned 5 countries, gave home to 5,000 families, and was a difficult and yet reaching exactly what Mario was saying, where others don't go. Then we can think of other financing that we did in various towns of quote-unquote richer countries, where still there is a major issue of affordable housing. This we have done in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, providing housing that are really a crucial instrument for social inclusion.
Thank you very much. Could you briefly say a little bit more? You're doing long-term investment in social infrastructure since a long time. Can you say something about the social impact you reach through you, specifically related to housing, social and affordable housing?
I mean, I think that, you see, the social impact as to well, let me say first that we are on a continuing learning mode to try and improve the quality of the assessment that we do to enhance effectiveness, because in this area, even more than in other areas, money is always short. So we want to spend it in the best possible way. And as I was saying, there are 3 different areas of where impact is. First, we provide this basic need. We satisfy the basic need of housing. You gave these quite remarkable quotes where you have people who do not have decent housing now they have. Secondly, there is the issue of the importance of housing as a part of an integrated supply of proper social services. Having a house within a community, close where there are services for the children, the elderly, the less vulnerable, the more vulnerable, the supply of healthcare services. This is absolutely crucial. And the third one is, of course, in having housing, which is an important part of providing the education services, because again, this is a kind of a joint approach that is crucial for the resilience of cities and to improve human capital, which is once again crucial for social inclusion and productivity.
Very, very good, very important. Thank you. Sorry, we have to be brief in the replies, but it would be nice to go further in all of the discussions, of course. Our next speaker, or next panelist, is Ms. Shanti Jagannathan. I'm sorry if I got your title wrong, so maybe you should say something yourself about the title, because I'm not sure where we got it wrong. But first of all, I would like, the ADB has become a major investor in social infrastructure and sustainability in the region, in the ASEAN region. Could you elaborate a little bit more how important it is to partner with the private sector in this context? We heard from your president, in a way, that private sector is very important. So could you elaborate this a little bit more? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me to join this panel. Human capital has already been mentioned several times. So to introduce myself, I'm Director for Education at Asian Development Bank. We really see investments in social infrastructure as a key or as a backbone to inclusive and sustainable economies. And we see social infrastructure from the human and social development point of view as having two distinct elements. One is in investments in infrastructure, physical infrastructure, whether it's in building school buildings, whether it's in the context of building universities or laboratories, or the physical dimension of it, and how to make them more climate resilient, how to make them more disaster risk resilient and energy efficient. But at the same time, also creating a network of soft infrastructure, which which keeps up with the trends of the time in ensuring that the curriculum, the learning, and the sort of qualifications and the skills of people are matching future market needs. You mentioned productivity increases. The previous speaker mentioned that. So how do we do all of that is what ADB is involved in. And the private sector partnership is critical to getting this right, getting the signals right, and getting the investments right. So we, health and education are really considered public goods, right? So the importance of public investments cannot be understated. But at the same time, to make it more sustainable, more long-lasting, we need private partnerships, and we engage them in a number of ways. It could be in co-financing opportunities. It could be in management contracts where they offer their managerial expertise in running programs. Increasingly in skills development, the involvement of sector skill councils, involvement of the private sector in determining the kind of skills that are needed for the future of markets, and in engaging in investing in education infrastructure as well, to ensure that the learners of today are in a way future ready. For instance, we embed this in our projects. The Assam Skills University in India, for instance, is a green campus, is a new greenfield project with a green campus with energy efficiency built in, but also will include a number of new and sustainability linked courses that are targeted to enhance the industrial corridor of the region. So, so we also look at vouchers, voucher schemes where individuals have the choice to enroll in private institutions you know, if they would like to engage their students and their children going to private sector schools. So, so we do this in a number of ways, and the impact of all of that is the one that we care about in the sense of school completion, a full cycle secondary education, access to skills for jobs, and increasingly we're also looking at research innovation at the higher education level, including you know, supporting startups, incubation facilities, university-led innovation and commercialization, where again, partnership with the private sector is absolutely critical to commercialize innovation that's led in the academia and in the university space. So we really seek to blend public and private, and like the previous speaker mentioned, going beyond vanilla kind of programs to really also partner with grant agencies, grant partners, to ensure that the most vulnerable are not left behind.
Great, thank you very much. Interesting. You mentioned already how important it is to ensure social impact at the same time as ensuring fair climate transition. And could you say a little bit more about the methodologies that you use to ensure this?
Partnerships are crucial. We also look at more intersectoral and multidisciplinary approaches. So we really feel that in a complex world that we live in, where the different development challenges are really interlocking, in a sense, we have sustainability, low quality sort of education, we have problems of urbanization, we have problems of disaster risk resilience. I mean, Asia and the Pacific region is one of the most vulnerable to climate disasters, which really, you know, impacts on learning continuity in many ways as well. So we really look at partnerships to strengthen the interconnections that we need to make. The education system is no longer just within the four walls of schools or education institutions, but how we collaborate with others. So the climate aspect is definitely one key one, where we are looking to embed curriculum infused with climate resilience skills, where we equip young people with not just the knowledge, but the ability to act, like, you know, climate action clubs in secondary schools, and very, very clearly skills for jobs that are in, you know, for occupations that are transitioning to more sustainable and green occupations. For instance, we're increasingly looking at skills for the e-mobility sector, for smart cities, for you know, aspects of green transition. Renewable energy is a very big topic. If the target for renewable energy is tripling it by 2030, it's not going to happen without a tripling of the workforce as well. So what kind of talent pools we need to build? So we work with the different sectors to identify and synergize the investments that are needed to strengthen human capital and talent pools across the various value chains, right from basic technician level all the way to engineers, planners, policymakers. And AI is another big topic, because it's at the intersection of digital and sustainability that we can find new and affordable solutions to solve the problems of Asia and the Pacific.
Thank you very much. That's very promising and nice to refer also to the AI digital opportunities there to reach scale and so on. I'm sorry, we have to go to the next speaker, and that's Andrea Rukstool. He is a Group Executive International for Lend-Lease, and you are a main representative here in this panel of the private sector. And in that context, and you also have, you're a global leader in urban regeneration. You very often work with government or with banks, such as the EIB. Could you say a little bit more about, give us the perspective of an example of successful public-private partnership for large-scale, complex projects like you are involved in?
Thank you, and thank you for having me here as a private sector. It is definitely something which we have been for many, many years involved in. We are an Australian company, but based across different markets. So we're very active in Asia, where our base is Singapore. We operate in Malaysia, Japan, China. So we've been doing a lot of projects in Asia. In Europe, we are in different countries. And again, probably historically, we've been very much involved in very large regeneration. Regeneration for us is really work in cities, starting from the most needed part of the city, which was former industrial or challenged part of cities, where through the regeneration we have seen over the years the ability to really give what we call an opportunity for the local community to actually have a second chance to emerge. And it's through both in terms of the quality of living, but also the ability for that community to really grow and actually have a possibility to actually improve beyond, and touches all the elements, you know, that goes to ability for educations, better educations, access to health, and everything else. We've been much involved in public-private partnership, and there are very good things about it, and there are still things that I think haven't been resolved yet to take these at the scale it should. Very recent example, we're in Milan, so we are in construction of the new Statale University, which is a public-private partnership. The funders with us includes EIB and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. We've been doing projects in healthcare, hospital, we've been doing educations, we've been doing different public buildings over the years across the different geographies. I think one on the emerging element that we have seen is that more and more we think about, and I think has been mentioned a few times, housing becoming an infrastructure. That's the concept we have been evolving into. So historically, housing has always been part of our job. It was traditionally developed, so real estate approach, real estate capital. But then I think the tensions we see every day in big cities, and I think it's not gonna stop, is about that element of affordability. So when become unaffordable, then are we really seeing housing as a real estate project, or are we really looking and talking about, you know, building infrastructure, like I always say, is roads, sewage? They are a fundamental part of an economic development or a prosperity of the city, of an opportunity for a community, have the right to live. And that comes with everything else. And with Filippo, we have been working on a project that actually includes also, once you have access to a house, what else can we do in terms of supporting the people that lives in the house, in terms of access to better education, health, and job? Because that is also part of what this combined approach or systematic approach needs to tackle. I want to mention a couple of things. One, the positive is there is a huge amount of interest from private sector into aligning to this vision of delivering social infrastructure. And why that is because, you know, we fundamentally believe that the prosperity of the city and the community has a positive effect on economy, as in stability. So it's actually part of our job, is actually enable that and translate that as much as possible. Large investors, pension funds, sovereign funds, are all looking to invest more capital into the sector. I think we have to look a bit of some specific legislations in some jurisdictions where insurances, for example, are limited in their ability to invest because some of the tax-connected challenges or limitations. So I think there is some work that needs to be done to enable these, I think, huge amount of capital that can really partner with public to resolve some of the big challenges. The other is really the implementation models. I think simplify, the private should really do what the private is good at, which is looking at industrialization's opportunity, looking at innovations in some of the sectors, You know, I can't believe that still today, and this is what I challenge my team every day, we build houses or housing project at the same speed that we used to build when I graduated many years ago in engineering, and hasn't evolved. It's a sector that needs a lot of innovation. So the private sector should focus on that element, so really tackle the scale and the stability and the long pipeline to really innovate. And there is a huge amount of opportunity, again, to deliver according to environmental standard, to resilience, and really move the product into that direction. At the same time, I see all around the world, so there are no exceptions in my experience, with probably a few exceptions. The time for us to get going on a project, it's too long. When you start working on an idea, to the time you can go on site is an average 4 to 5 years. That is far too long for the challenge we have. So is there a better model in terms of private and public partnership to tackle the speed, to tackle the ability to move faster? Because we're all aligned. We're delivering a fundamental infrastructure for society, but it's taking us, by the time we finish, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think we're not really using enough of the power of the partnership. So how do we accelerate from idea to delivery? How do we innovate on the product? And I think on the interest and alignment, the public and the private are much closer today than ever, and I think there are more opportunity of collaborations going forward.
Wonderful. You already you talked about speed and scale, my favorite words here in this context, in a way. So you, very briefly, because you already elaborated quite a lot on this, you find, I mean, social and affordable housing is important, as you said, in urban transformation, as you experience also in several of your examples. You confirm that this is an attractive asset class for private investors?
Very much so. I think all the elements that were mentioned, it's a long-term investment, and particularly institutional investors. We're a listed company, but we work with institutional investors around the world, like long-term, right? Like the ability to invest long-term and stable investment. I think the other element is aligning to more and more what everyone is moving towards, which is our targets. We are aligned, and we declare this on environmental and social. We have specific targets of net zero by 2025, which we have achieved, and absolute zero by 2040, which is still a bit a challenge, where my innovation topic comes into play for sure. But social outcome targets as well, linked to the project we do, are fundamental. And this goes back to, in my view, human capital. Competitiveness in the private sector is the ability to deliver with purpose. And I think if we do that, we attract the best talent, we attract the best partners, we deliver the best projects. And I think it's really and truly a win-win. And more the private sector is waking up to the fact that unless we give that purpose angle to the things that we do, or we're not going to be competing for long.
Thanks a lot. I have a question in the audience. Is our mayor, Roxana Fias, already arrived here, or?
No, she's not. I know her very well. Okay. It's one of my partners. So.
Okay, sorry, because I don't want to go. Yeah, so she is really stuck in traffic, clearly, because she called saying that she was late. But is she online? No. Somebody. She got very stuck. Yeah. Okay, fine. Thanks. Okay, we go into the next speaker, that is Filippo Adari. He's the co-founder and managing partner of PlusValue. And you have some slides, I think. You might need this for the slides. Or you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think we've heard already about the critical role of social infrastructure, particularly affordable housing, an urgent need of it, and the investment opportunities, as we just heard from Lend-Lease and others. So let's explore a little bit on how collaboration can be further realized, and maybe immediately also say something about the impact investment index you're working, or we are working on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lieve. Thank you, everybody. But also, I want to thank the European Commission, because we have been working with them and what they are trying to do to build at the policy level, but also with operators like Lend-Lease, because they have shown us how to do it on the ground, what works, what doesn't work, what often stop this partnership between public and private. So we started working essentially with a tool that wants to create that matching between the public and the private and channel the capital into social infrastructure. You know, we normally think about economic infrastructure, as everybody knows about this. But in social infrastructure, there is a word that we tend to overlook, social. And social doesn't mean just the purpose, it's the magic in this infrastructure, because it's that the fact that they serve a fundamental purpose for society creates benefits for this kind of project, for investments, that we are not able to capture. The social impact index wants to capture that magic, relevant to the private sector, relevant to the public sector. And what we are going to do is actually to define and capture this social dimension, the empowerment that Andrea was describing. But don't forget, from an investment point of view, that empowerment of the people, it means also people who are able to pay the rents, which is a quite very fundamental thing for the success of those projects. And we will focus on social and affordable housing as the very priority. We thank the European Commission because believe in this project. There isn't an equivalent of such at the European level. We put together a consortium quite unique, because you need a very different set of skills, certainly about investments and finance in real estate and urban transformation, as well as today's you must do it with all the opportunities that technology offers: big data, AI, machine learning, high-performance computing, and this is provided by IFAB, which is the foundation of the Bologna Technopole, so one of the three main high-performance computing in Europe. So top in Europe and public to guarantee accountability and transparency. And finally, IOB, the think tank of Greece, which are leader on European policy on economic and industrial, as well as policy. So this is not a game that we cannot do without understanding how policy works. What is unique of SI4? First of all, that this is designed for social infrastructures. At the core is not just adapted. And the other aspect is to correlate the social value and the financial value. Let me pause on this, because there is a lot of rhetorics about the social dimension. We don't talk about ESG anymore, but it's not really forgotten. But that social, if it doesn't have a direct correlation with the financial value, it will never become a driver for the private sector. So capturing this in a quantitative way is fundamental to drive market growth. It has to cover the cycle of investments, from ex ante to ex post, from the planning for the design of the funds down to what has been achieved. And it has to be a smart system. Machine learning is the technical word. It means more you do it, more you learn how to do it better. And therefore, this is, first of all, a research and innovation project that will grow all the time. A few more aspects that we need to have very clear in mind. the assessment with quantitative assessment of impact, for what I was saying before, socially always a bit, let me say, fluffy, and that doesn't work. If it's only qualitative, subjective, it won't deliver at scale. And so moving from the qualitative and the quantitative is where we're heading to, and we can do it today with the data and the technology. It's designed on primary data, so it's not an academic exercise, although it's driven by academics, but it's based on what's happening on projects like the ones done by Lieve, the projects done by Cheb. By the way, I thank both of them because they are providing the data. Those are real projects. We start where the market is and push it. Transparency and accountability is what will makes difference as compared to many other solutions. We don't play the black box game. We want you to be able to understand the choices that have been made, to create a system that feeds into, so in order to improve and refine step by step every time. Clearly, aligned with the European regulation, but don't forget the market standards. Real estate has very important standards and certification. The problem in case is there are too many to play with. And so we really needed to have some clear reference points for everybody. On the other hand, every project, as these guys will tell you, are different. So they have to be context-based and adaptable to the single project. Sorry, I need to run a bit more. SA4 serves all the main stakeholders in this market, because if you don't align them, it won't work. But every stakeholder steps in with the different needs. Simplifying, the private investors ultimately want to be sure when they play with the private sector that the social outcomes is delivered at the end. And this is something on which they cannot really compromise. On the other hand, for the private sector, it has to be provide a competitive advantage. It has to raise capital. It has to give points in public procurement. It has to be business. And this is what we are doing. How are we doing? We partner with market players. We work on real data, their data sets, and we apply, because this is not something that we can do just behind a computer in a closed room. We need to engage with the places where this is happening. So we have discussions with, for instance, London and Milan, with their housing projects, how to apply it, and certainly we won't get it right at the beginning. But it will be a progressive improvement. Actually, when we talk about coalition, I must say that everybody has so far been extremely positive working on SA4. The simple answer is there is a need in the market. So public and private investors, as well various stakeholders, are joining us. But we start from the best. So Denmark is actually the first case on which we are building the prototype that we will present in July for two reasons. Denmark has one of the most successful social affordable housing program. 1 out of 5 Danish live in social affordable housing with very high standard, very successful financial model, but they also have the richest database of financial and social value. So what we are developing, it will really start with the top. Clearly for Denmark, and then we are already discussing with the UK and Italy, and there is a longer list for the different cases. This is also a call for partnership. How do you partner with SA4? Endorse, thank you very much. But also work with us on the research side, and we start with data, your data, real data. And the second side is the technology, is the tool, is the development, the design phase. And so also to be part of a journey that really use the best of technology today available for a social purpose. And by the way, of everything we spend, 75% of the budget on research, while the standard is 15% in the industry. And we want to do it beyond Europe. This is not just about Europe. We want to do it with Asia. We are very grateful for ADB to have created this opportunity for us to launch. It's more opening a discussion and then to find the right partners also to share this venture with the rest of Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo. I would like to propose to open up to the audience for questions, comments, because this was a very rich panel, even if we miss our politician in a way in the panel. But if she still joins us, we might listen to her at the end of the presentation, of the presentations. So I'm sure that you have some questions or comments. And maybe before you ask your question, present yourself so the audience and the speakers know who you are. Yes. But can somebody, Fabio, can you go around with or somebody come around with the mics? Thanks. Yes, it's okay.
Thank you. My name is Paola Bergamaschi. I just sit on the board of directors of financial institutions like UniCredit here or AIG in the US. So very much listening to what we could do and learning what's the cutting edge that is developing. My question is really for Andrea. So I see a lot of debt coming through that. So my question is, I understand pension funds, you do rental mainly, so there is a steady yield. And what about private equity? I mean, how do you see the involvement at the moment? And how do you see potentially getting lured much more into this kind of investments? Because there is a heck of a lot of dry powder out there.
Great. Can I see if there are more questions at this stage, and then I'll come back to the speakers? No? Not yet? Yes, please here.
Thanks. Carlo Andrea Biraghi, Politecnico di Milano. My question is mostly for Filippo regarding the SI4 index, and thanks for this very interesting presentation. Is about the data that you use, because you mentioned the data coming from the cases of London and Milan. I just want to better understand a bit if these are like data that are used to be developed, or used to be created during the housing development project, or there is also a part of, like, let me say, more generic data, more generic social or economical data that can be used eventually for a sort of low-level or entry-level baseline application of this kind of index. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. These are already two very large questions, maybe. Somebody else? Okay, at the end, there are two people there at the end. So I first give Andreas.
Hi, I'm Luisa. I'm from C40 Cities. I'm following up on the question from Politecnico about the data. I'm curious to understand better what the criteria for social impact is within that data and how you came to that, thinking about the sources of data that might be available in Europe versus some sources of data that might be less available in Asia, for example. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, yes, please.
Hello, Konstantin Chizik, partner at Hillman Partners, British law and consultancy firm. My question refers to all of the panel, but probably mainly to Filippo. Are you considering using your index and the experience in other countries, not only to bring the index there, but also to learn in developing countries, especially where the labor is cheaper, or if the countries are conflict affected, like Ukraine in particular, and I know that the PlusValue and you yourself were engaged in projects there. Are you considering using some of those countries as sandboxes for new ideas and approaches that could be potentially cheaper or faster or easier implemented from the prices, from the regulatory standpoint, and bringing that experience back to the West? Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have one more question here, and then I really will ask people on the panel here to respond.
Hi, I'm Jitendra Saraugi, public accountant from India. My question is for the SI4 team. Number one, is this presently for affordable housing project only, or there are other projects? And second questions, could you briefly highlight the parameters which you have taken for evaluating the impact of affordable housing?
Really very good questions. Andreas, can I ask you first to respond to the first question? And then Filippo, but I will ask the other panelists also to respond, because I think some of it is relevant for all of you. Okay?
I'll be quick. Yes, they're moving, private equity. They are always spotting the edge in these things, so we have seen few of them already moving. I always go back to pensions and sovereigns because it's a long term, and private equity typically is very short and very, opportunistic. But they generally are good in finding, areas of the market to move into. There is a growing presence of them in the sector. I always go back. Capital is capital, so I'm very happy whoever moves. I think the scale of the need is such big that I think everyone is actually trying to find their ways into the sector.
Yeah.
From Mario and
Filippo? Yeah.
I would take it at the end.
Yes. No. I think you have specific questions to you.
So shall I?
Yes, please.
Should I go first? Okay. So the data question is clearly the big one, and perhaps tedious for whoever is not working on these things, but super important. Let me unpack it in a quite different way. We started with Europe because we had a clear framework, access, knowledge with the players. So essentially it's where we are very comfortable to move. And the framework, the grant making of the European Commission, the policy on social housing is essentially an enabler. It was clear from the beginning, for instance, the artificial distinction of EU and UK does not really make sense when you actually look at the flow of capital. But from a regulatory point of view, we have to take this in consideration. So all these parameters are going to affect and affected our initial decision. And we started with EU because it's also where there is at least in our knowledge at the moment, the density of data, plus the recent policy changes. There is more attention by developers in looking at the non-financial aspects. Actually, the UK is the most interesting because the Social Value Act. So initial focus is the data available in the project, generated by the project, provided by the investors. Often the investors handle them. But then opening to all the other data, so public data. I give you also a practical example. In literature, there is an interesting model looking at the correlation between eating consumption and the income of the family, so you can get very granular to understand actually the purchasing power of that family, and you can chase it through the time. But that means that you can use satellite data to identify the changing patterns on eating consumption in that block, in that houses over time. So that is, if you want, public data and technology that combined with the data provided by the project and the public data with methodologies often quite sophisticated, it gives us a picture that otherwise nobody has. So there is a very standard way to do the SI4 evaluation, which is the one that at the moment is mandated by regulation and standards, and the one really experimental, and that will be certainly the most interesting. But first of all, we have to stick to the data provided and analyzing based on the regulation. The social factors that we monitor, again, we are taking a bottom-up approach. So we know the regulation, we know the requirements, But what we want to understand is what social factor based on the existing projects are the driver of social value and as an impact on the financial profile of those investments. We cannot tell you now at this stage where we land. We have already, but in July we'll give you already a first report based on the Danish case. So yes, it's taking a bit longer than we wish, but at least what we provide is very solid. We launched the appeal to Asia because, and SA4 had been from design open to other countries. Sorry, the UK as an example, but we have been looking in other countries. Actually, probably there are some emerging economies which are also very dense and data-oriented, where there are plans for affordable housing where we should go. But we go wherever we are invited, wherever there is a partnership, because otherwise it wouldn't work. You need to engage with your partners. So open to work in all the countries with all the partners, I hope with Asian Development Bank, where there is a partnership to build together and do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo. Maybe good to mention, yes, I would like to ask Mario Nava to intervene also, but I would like to mention on PlusValue that we have a white paper on methodology, maybe useful, if any of you interested, would be useful to share. And on the question of India, it might be also important that we develop not only on social and affordable housing, but the idea is to move in the direction also of education and health, all of the social infrastructures. Mario.
I wanted to go exactly on methodology, and you'll apologize me for making 1 minute commercial, quote unquote. I mean, what Filippo is doing is basically making operative a vast amount of knowledge on how you measure impact. For those who are interested, tonight at 5:30 at Bocconi University, there is myself and director of Bocconi University. We present a book called Social Impact. It's unfortunately in Italian, but I'm sure you'll get around. And that book looks at different methodologies. Then there is a practical case which has nothing to do with housing, has to do with inmates and how much investment you can do in inmates and what is the return. But what is very interesting is that you see all the methodologies and the way to differentiate. Now, we have had, at the Commission, we have had a big experience, and here is the mayor, we have had a big experience on investment, let's say, beyond financial. So we have it in environmental, in social, environmental, in social, and so on and on. And it's quite clear that what you always need at the end of the day is a way to measure. So the indicator, what we call the third element. The first element is the advice. You need someone to advise to invest. The second is the categorization, the taxonomy. You cannot expect that the standard trader knows what is a social or a non-social or a green or a non-green investment. He needs to be told. But then the third, the most important thing probably, is the way you measure impact. And there, any approach is open. And I'm sure Carlo will mention what they do, which I think is very good. But without that, and without going and mentioning Einstein, that if you don't measure it, you don't know what it is, but that's exactly the point. You need to be able to measure it in a way which is market-proof. And I think that's where we find the work with Filippo and company very useful.
Okay. Wonderful. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just 2 words, really, scalability and policy planning. I mean, clearly, through the debate, the questions, the various interventions, came up the need to find solutions that are scalable, that are uniform enough to attract capital in a systematic way. At the same time, we know that especially social projects are, each of them, one of their own kind. And to make these 2 issues compatible, indeed, there are a lot of interesting avenues that are based on financial innovation and knowledge sharing. The other point that I want to make is on planning. I mean, we have been discussing social investment, focusing on housing, making the point that anyhow it has to come together with other investments, and where the impact of housing or is better if comes together with the provision, with the joint provision of our social services. Well, there is the need to develop new schemes to provide support to the policymaker, just to have the tools to plan the policy in a way that is more effective in capturing the synergies between the different social policies, both in the welfare of citizens and its impact on human capital and productivity. So I think that this is just a perfect phasing in to give the floor to a policymaker.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your patience. Look, I'm going to say a few things. My name is Roxana Fiaz. I'm the mayor of the 9th largest local authority in the United Kingdom. We have a borough of 371,000 people, growing fast. In the next 5 to 10 years, we anticipate some 500,000 people comprising of our resident population. We have a vast diversity and mix of residents, a huge amount of diversity, literally a community that has a connection to every single part of the world, some 242 languages, dialects spoken, a young population, 38% of our residents are under the age of 24. When we think about just transition in our working with partners and valued partners, and in this instance, in Newham, we are working with Lend-Lease on 2 major schemes, both of which are core features in the London Growth Plan that the Mayor of London published in March of this year. Some 65,000 homes in total being delivered, and that's outside of what we're delivering as a municipality. We have in the pipeline, with planning approval, some 5,000 plus homes at social rent that we want to build. The critical issue for us as we approach this juncture of the 21st century, in the midst of the biggest challenge facing humanity, climate emergency, where many municipalities and nation states have declared a climate emergency, is how do you balance appropriately the needs of the planet, the needs of people, and the needs in terms of affordability of housing? And how do you, in the context of a collaborative approach with private investment, with developers who also want to meet important, vital, humane outcomes, achieve the investment vehicles that arrive at a just set of outcomes that meet that required balance? So I'm looking forward to ongoing conversations with key strategic partners such as all of you in this room, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing our all-important work with developers such as Lend-Lease, who are pioneering in this field, who are thinking deeply in human ways, because let's not be forgetful of the impact that the crisis in housing facing thousands, millions of people, not just in the UK, but across Europe and across the world. We have some 7,500 families with children living in temporary accommodation, some 41,000 people on our housing waiting list. We simply won't be able to deliver the homes that they need and that they can afford at a time of real financial challenge and precarity. So all of us need to be collaborating in response to that human emergency, which is needing to align with our response to the planetary crisis that we all face. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you and welcome. Sorry that you had to go through a hassle in the city. Maybe you could say a little bit more about what you're doing for the moment. You are facing a major challenge. You've done a lot on urban regeneration already in Newham, but and you're calling for more and more participation and collaboration. But what is ongoing for the moment?
So presently, I stepped into office in May 2018, so I mark my 3 years of my second four-year term. And since 2018, we've been mobilising in response to the climate emergency, the housing crisis, and we've integrated our just transition agenda that has to be integral to how we think about place and the future sustainability of our borough and its people. We've shifted our housing delivery company that the municipality owns in its entirety to one that uses and leverages our land asset base to deliver homes. And we've made a requirement that 50% of those homes are for social rent, i.e. homes that people can afford, and 50% as part of a cross-subsidy model is put onto the private rented sector so that we can generate income in order to pay back the borrowing that we've built up. It's now got to a point where the scale of housing need, because of the inefficacies of the housing delivery market, the economic climate, and high construction costs as a consequence of inflation, we're needing to look at important and vital collaborative public-private partnerships in order to drive and accelerate further. And we know that we've got to develop some viable and interesting and innovative investment products for our partners to be interested in. Since 2018, in response to a manifesto pledge to deliver 1,000 homes, we're on course to be delivering those. And in my second term, I announced the intention to deliver another 1,500. So in total, that's 2,500 that we're driving. And in addition to that, across 3 major urban regeneration areas, we'll be looking at delivering over a 10 to 15-year time frame, 10,000 homes driven by the council, working in partnership, largely through the construction route, but obviously increasingly borrowing costs are a major issue for us. So we borrow through central government via a mechanism called the Public Works Loan Board, and that's been advantageous. But given the policy changes happening, and given the issues of high construction cost and inflationary pressures, we're needing to look at how we can enter into that public-private partnership arena in a viable way, both for the private sector partners, but also for public bodies as well.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. I'm sorry we have to finish this this discussion, but I hope this is only a beginning of a further collaboration. Some of us here are already collaborating a lot, but we heard a lot of interesting inputs, I think, from the different perspectives. It shows very clearly that we need a partnership from the different perspectives, like PlusValue has been setting on for this project, but it much wider, of course, our partnership with the Commission, of course, but with the Council of Europe Bank has been very, very productive from in the beginning. We hope that this will also develop further with the Asian Development Bank, and that will benefit also people on the ground, like we heard in London, but also in a lot of other countries. By the way, we're going to visit a project here in Milano in an hour or something. So if any of you are interested to join us and you have not registered yet, please let us know, because that's an interesting project on the ground. I think what is most fascinating from this panel and from this collaboration is that how you can go from policy and politics to operationals and make things happen on the ground. And that is what is key for me and key for reaching the scale and the speed that we need. Thank you for being here, and some of you we will see on the visit and further on in the discussions today. Thank you very much.